Go ahead, Nora, whenever you're ready.
We can start? Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see lots of familiar faces and lots of new ones. Thank you for joining us for this Hope Through Refugee-Led Initiatives webinar, which is part of the Rotary Peace Fellows Association's webinar series, leading up to the Rotary Cyber Peace Conference on June 27th. So I feel very privileged to be moderating this event today. The purpose of the webinar is to highlight the critical role refugees play in development and humanitarian spaces and systems, as well as peace-building initiatives. And this webinar is different from other webinars in that the impacted community members, that is refugees themselves, are speaking here today, and they're at the forefront of making meaningful contributions to research, global and local initiatives, and driving the direction of funding. So our hour and a half together will begin with 4 presentations from our speakers. And then we'll have a very strict 10-minute question and answer period. So my apologies if your questions don't get asked or answered, but you can post them in the chat box and another facilitator will send a few selections to me to ask. And we're keeping that question and answer period short so that there's more time for discussion in the breakout facilitation groups, which will be 30 minutes, and I'll explain more about that as we get there. So let's jump into our presentations. Our first is about an incredible collaboration between Team Sunrise at Kakuma Refugee Camp in Kenya and Stacey Martin at Portland State University. And I understand the team will introduce themselves in the video. Thank you.
We wanted to talk about the statistics first to start out with them. 70.80 million people are forcibly displaced worldwide. Out of that, 25.9 million are refugees. And the displaced people, half are young people. We also wanted to dispel the myth that this is a migrant crisis. It is actually a crisis of inequality, a crisis of resource exploitation, a crisis of war, and a crisis of climate change. The UN General Ban Ki-moon said poor countries host vastly more displaced people than wealthier ones, while anti-refugee sentiment is heard loudest in the industrial countries. Developing nations host 80% of the world's refugees. And according to the Pew Research, the United States plans to admit a maximum of 18,000 refugees in the fiscal year of 2020. That is in comparison of 2016, when the U.S. admitted nearly 85,000 refugees to be resettled. And I'm going to talk very short about my refugee-led community-based action research because I want to have more time talking about refugee-led organizations and also context. So the purpose of my research study was to explore refugee students' perceptions of hope evolved through participation in the psychosocial peace building education course in a higher education and protracted refugee context. And this is a program that I developed in South Africa, Jamaica, Nepal, and Kenya. It's art and literacy-based peace building program. And the summary of outcomes, we had the opportunity to publish some papers and co-present and also co-facilitate at a couple of conferences as well. And we continue to do that because that's my mission. So moving along, we're going to talk about the context and also the refugee-led initiatives. And we'll have Gara talk about social distancing, Christopher talking about water and sanitation, Abdi talking about psychosocial support, Daoud talking about refugee-led organizations, and Vestine closing it up.
I can say social distancing in camps like refugee camp is difficult or nearly impossible because of many factors. One of these factors is related to our lifestyle and standard of living. Refugees' lifestyle is social or communal. Private life exists only in limited aspects of day-to-day life. As a result, there is no boundary between private and social life. Of course, the underlying reasons are survival. It is difficult to break such survival bondage because of coronavirus. Trying to break such bondages also mean endangering lives. And the second factor that limits the implementation of social distancing is related to the basic services that are provided. Water supply is a very good example for this. In the camp, water is fetched at water points, where 30 to 40 households fetch at a single point. Water supply is done 2 times per day for few hours only. One has to make a line with his or her jerrycan in order to fetch water. So at water points, not only people come together, but also many water cans come in contact, which makes water points at one key places that don't favor the implementation of social distancing.
So Christopher was not able to record his, and I will read what he wrote. Washing hands. Kenya recorded its first case of COVID-19 in March 2020. So people were required to embrace good hygiene practices, such as frequent hand washing with soap, not to further the spreading of coronavirus disease. In Kakuma refugee camp, where it's congested, they needed to have an awareness to know how to take measures, because it's extremely important when dealing with crowds, because they are living in a large number of communities and people. Washing hands needs soap and a tank to reserve the water. The soap people get from the distribution center is not enough to wash hands and clothes for their children. It is difficult to embrace the measures of washing hands.
Kakuma, an isolated area surrounded by valleys, has very poor connectivity and electricity. For this reason, refugee-led organizations are now better equipped or have the capacity. Nevertheless, refugee-led organizations in Kakuma have human resources, that is, refugees who are willing to give back to their communities. Sunrise team also offer basic counseling and group sessions using basic psychosocial peace building. Yet still, this is not enough comparing to the number in need of psychosocial support in the camp.
These refugee-led initiatives try to fill the gap existing between the refugee and the international NGOs. Often they create opportunity for the refugees and host community. They provide life skills courses and ICT training that would otherwise would have remained out of reach. During this difficult time of COVID-19, these initiatives are trying to reach out to their fellow refugees and host community through online means. A few others are distributing free face masks. Others are making available hand washing shampoo and detergent locally made by refugees. And most importantly, shifting or changing the learning sessions in an online way. These led initiatives do not have funders or partnership or budget to work on. Some of the challenges they still face include registrations, partnership, donor, documentation, and a few others.
My name is Vestine, and I'm a settled refugee in Canada from Kakuma refugee camp. I want to talk about life, and life is good here, and life was bad in the camp and still not good. And I assume life is worse during this time of COVID-19. People often ask me, what do I love about Canada? I love everything about Canada. The only thing I don't like is the way people are not thankful for the kind of life they have lived for all of their lives. Like you're born, you have access to everything, you have food, you have shelter. You don't even think about it. You don't even think about that sometime you would not have it. I would love people to be more considerate and start looking back, start watching news and see how much fortunate they are and be thankful and just feel glad that they have life. Some other people survive instead of living. Thank you.
So reading off statistics is far different than meeting the people who are statistics, for they have stories of resilience, struggle, survival, and, believe it or not, hope. And there is hope and knowledge in Kakuma. And if you are quiet, you can hear hope breathing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation and the important work, and it was very touching for me. The second presentation is by Zamzam Abdikadir and Lukendo Mbokani Jerry. Sorry if I've not done justice to the names. Africa chapter representatives from the Global Refugee-Led Network.
Growing up in a refugee camp and experiencing many challenges, I have realized that there are people in the camp that we have different language, culture, and religion, but at the same time we share same stories. Like we ended up in a same situation, which has been a refugee. We experience same challenge and overcome some of those challenges. So as a refugee youth, we realized that there is a need of many things, and we came as an initiative and created refugee-led organizations. I believe that refugees have the potential to help other refugees since they have experienced the same problems. As a leader, I took the responsibility of eradicating elder illiteracy, especially women, because in our communities, elders still believe or maybe practice cultural norms. There are many girls and women who drop out of school or never attend a school. Hence, I decided to educate elders, especially women, so that I changed their fixed mindsets. I remember 2018, I started classes at my home teaching English language and math to the elderly women and girls. So sometimes I encounter women who appreciate my work, and this made me happy and also motivate me to continue the work. I saw many parents sending their daughters to school, which I think is a great improvement. So today, with this pandemic situation, as a refugee-led initiative leaders, we are giving awareness to women and girls who are at home and have no any other alternative to study. So we give them a video awareness, and we told them to focus on things related to education so that they don't involve themselves with unwanted pregnancy, or maybe they got the feeling of dropping out of school since the schools are closed, and we never know when are they going to be open again. So I believe refugee-led initiatives are still functioning and need to function for the future, because they are helping out their other refugees, and they have goals, they have dreams at the end to reach, so that they eradicate or maybe overcome the challenge that other refugees are encountering.
My name's Lukendo Mbokani Jerry, founder and the executive director of One Youth One Heart Initiative. Today, over 60% of refugees worldwide live in the cities rather than in the refugee camps, and the majority of them are young people. Given that most refugees living in urban areas are youth, there is a strong need for fundamental change in humanitarian intervention. We must create new innovative ways to address refugee challenges. Rather than wasting time on hiring expensive international organizations to implement refugee programs, it would be better to spend money on programs to help refugees to help themselves. We as refugees always leave behind all our possessions, but not our skills and knowledge. If given the same rights to engage in civic activities and to live a productive life, refugees can help themselves make a positive change in society and contribute to the development of the host country. I was born in the city called Bukavu, South Kivu, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I was born in a family of 30 children. I have 5 brothers, 2 sisters, 13 step-brothers, and 10 step-sisters. I am the last born from my mother. My father, a professional trader dealing in shoes and clothes, worked hard to send me to school. Just like many other young people, I had a lot of plans and dreams. I wanted to complete my studies, get a nice job, marry and have my own children, and support my family. But these dreams were cut in a blink of an eye. War in my homeland forced me to flee to Uganda in 2008, 12 years ago. In my home country, I lived in the city, so I felt the city of Kampala is a much better choice than a refugee camp. Refugees in the cities have always been denied international assistance, even after their recognition by UNHCR in 1997. In addition to the poverty problems we are confronted with as the local urban poor, we are facing challenges due to our refugee status, such as discrimination and language barriers. In Congo, the official language is French, but in Uganda, it is English. Refugees have no access to education and health. We are exposed to harassment, exploitation, intimidation, discrimination. Humanitarian organizations mostly focus on the formal settlements in the rural areas, and there is nothing in place for us in the cities. We don't want our host country to think for us. We can actually think and want to work and support ourselves. In 2015, I joined my other 4 colleagues in exile from different nationalities to set up an organization to support other refugee youth. OYO, One Youth One Heart, began by observing existing conditions, then brainstorming and conceptualizing solutions, followed by developing and implementing them. Our programs are based on the framework to emphasize community engagement and collective learning, and guide participants through a series of activities as we address a particular challenge. The OYO program for refugee support involved in a stage of progressing from Community School Innovation Challenge to Empower Her Innovate Livelihood, to Emerging Innovators Forum, and to OYO Initiative Stop Spread COVID-19. The School Innovation Challenge changed the energy and mindset and perception of the student who might have chosen to drop out of school. This initiative restored hope in the lives of students and kept them in various schools. The mentored student club members at each school activated a diverse range of projects From a local poultry pen to an organic garden growing legume and maize, each project began with little fund but plenty of hope and community support. The Free Empower High Innovate Livelihood Innovation Training helped empower young girls and mothers to engage in socio-economic activities with the Uganda community, allowing them to start up an income-generating activities to sustain themselves and families. The Emerging Innovators Forum offered a platform where youth from different nationalities came to pitch their ideas to different stakeholders with hope to get financial and mentorship support. There was so much creativity and originality. The One Youth One Heart initiative Stop Spread COVID-19 provided emergency food relief and sanitizing material to 157 households, including homeless, families at risk, and single mothers to contribute to build frontiers and avoid the spread of COVID-19. Refugees are not burdens, but rather key economic players. Refugee-led organizations have long played an important but neglected role in providing protection and humanitarian assistance to other refugees and host communities. We've seen so many families become self-sufficient.
Okay. I'm not sure if that was the end, but thank you very much for the presentation. I just wanted to make a note here about why we have video presentations. And that's because a lot of our presenters are coming from areas in the world where there are electricity blackouts, intermittent Wi-Fi, and so that's why we pre-recorded them just in case the presenters couldn't be here. So our next presentation is by Napoleon Akaizu, Rotary Peace Fellow and a dear friend. Napoleon is a caseworker from Kentucky Refugee Ministries. And I think you need to unmute yourself, or someone does.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So am I next?
Yeah, you're next.
Okay. First of all, Stacy, where's my video? Can she hear me?
Yeah. Did you want to play that first or introduce yourself a little bit?
Oh, okay. Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Napoleon Akayezu, and I work with Kentucky Refugee Ministries. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. That's the Midwest. And yeah, we work, as our name indicates, we work with refugees from around the world, welcoming them from airports, providing housing and other services they need when they get in the United States. Yeah, I think that's all for presentation, unless you want to hear more.
Always. But we could play the video first, and then at the end, maybe if you'll have a minute or two to conclude and say anything else.
Oh my gosh. Wait a second. Oh my goodness. Get a little bit rowdy. To feel at home for me, you need to feel wanted. Here, like when I go to school at lunch, they're like, "Believe, come sit by me, come sit by me." And you're like, "Really? You really want to sit by me? Like for real?"
Oh, who wants to come up and do that?
In South Africa, a lot of people didn't want you there. Wait, hold on. I just came back from school when my mom told me we were coming to America.
It's okay, you can do it.
I was like, wait, what? We're going to America. And I got really excited.
You have your phone with you? I do. Great. I want to see a phone that you made back into your records.
don't know what to do, you don't know where you are going, but as long as I will be far away from these shootings or these killings, massacres you experience every day, as long as I'm far away from there, I will be peaceful. That's the only things you have in your mind.
Refugee is someone who is fleeing due to war, persecution, just a well-founded belief that they cannot return home.
It was Thursday, April 19, 2012.
Hello, Mireille.
We were just looking for our suitcases, and then my mom heard her name, and my dad heard his name, and he turned around.
Oh, Viola, Erasto, welcome in America. We were so surprised. They say, oh, there are some people who know us here. It was like, we arrived now. We arrived home now. We didn't struggle a lot to know where to go because people were there for us.
KRM is an organization that assists in resettling refugees.
We try to empower them to be able to make a new life here. We take them to their apartment the night that they arrive, help their kids get plugged into schools, and we tell them, I am your caseworker, however, you'll be working with a whole agency, a whole team of people, and we're all here to work together.
Number 8. Okay. What's he doing?
Building the house.
Yeah, building a house. Good job.
I felt totally like newly born when I made my first steps here in the United States after 25 years. Everything was new to me.
I always talk about my story. I was there, and I'm here now. The first thing that is shocking for our client is when they tell you, you're gonna learn English approximately for 3 months, and then you're gonna start looking for a job.
People from KRM, they tell us how to apply for a job, how to pass interviews. It just gives.
Not sure if there's.
It stopped.
Is Bill still here? You'll have to say verbatim what the rest of the video was supposed to say.
Oh, that's all you prepared? Okay.
No, I think it might be that because it's an online link that it's that it paused itself. I don't know, maybe Bill. I don't know if he's still here. Bill's our technical person.
Okay. Yeah. Now, as you could see on the video, that's one family we chose. Actually, I would like to say that this family is from Burundi, and now they're a U.S. citizen. And one of our successful cases, they just bought their own house, and both parents are working full time. It's a happiness at KRM when we welcome refugees who arrive in the United States with nothing, start from scratch, and 5 years later, they're homeowners and they pay taxes like any other U.S. citizen. It's really, we consider that as a big success. So that's one example, and we have many. The thing the video was going to say is that challenge refugee meet when they got here. We welcome various level of education, from pre-literate to highly educated people. So the first challenge, among others, is when someone comes here with a PhD or a master's, a BA, BS, and you tell him, all we have to offer you is an entry-level job. So that's, you can see their faces. They say, they would like, really? And I say, oh, sir, oh, ma'am, that's all we have for you for now. So that's one of the challenges, but you can see how determined all those people who come from refugee camp, they say, okay, all we need is a job. All we need is something that will allow us to put food on the table for our kids and for ourselves. So among other things, we offer services we offer to refugees is school for kids. Before they arrive, we gather buyers and we contact local districts and we register kids for school. We put parents in ESL, English as Second Language classes. And of course, we help them find employment, their first employment in the United States. So those are few of among services we provide to refugees. And I think I will have time to explore that if Nora or Stacy allow me to do so.
Well, okay. So we will have breakout sessions, and Napoleon will be one of the facilitators. But we're at the mark, or a little bit over the mark, where I'm supposed to move things forward to the next presenter. I hope that's okay, Napoleon. And I was told to be tough, so I'm following directions. So our next presentation is by Sonia Anderson, and Sonia works for the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies.
Thanks, Nora. Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here today. A huge thanks to Stacy for inviting me and INE to be a part of this webinar, and exciting to see people introducing themselves from so many different places in the world. I'm going to share my screen briefly. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. Let's see. My system preferences are not going to allow me. 1 second. Maybe I'll just start without the PowerPoint. All right, anyways, I wanted to start by just sharing a little bit about INE with all of you, just in case you're not familiar with the network. So the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies is a open global network of UN agencies, NGOs, donors, governments, universities, schools, and crisis-affected populations. Our mandate and mission is to ensure the right to quality, safe, and relevant education for all who live in emergency and crisis contexts through prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. So looking at kind of all the cycles of a humanitarian response. And we're a network of over 16,000 individual members. So really drawing on a large population of institutions, agencies, and people affected by crisis and conflict. We have 150 partner organizations and representatives from 190 countries. And what we really are striving for is collective impact. So recognizing that, as individuals in this sector, we can have a degree of impact, but with more coordinated support and work in these contexts, we can have a much stronger impact and really try and reduce a lot of the duplication that takes place across our sector. So we work in a variety of different network spaces. I have an image, which I wish I could be showing all of you, that kind of graphics out our network, various working groups, task teams, different ways for individuals and organizations to be involved. But the work that I coordinate is around evidence and research. And one of the projects specifically is managing a research fund that we have. So this fund is a 5-year research fund supported by a donor, Dubai Cares, based in Dubai, of $10 million US. So we have grants of roughly 2 million every year. And I think the reason that Stacy invited me to be a part of this webinar is to speak a little bit more about this research fund. We're really guided by 3 principles, I would say, in our evidence generation. One being that the gaps in evidence in crisis-affected contexts are best identified by those on the ground and affected. So Dubai Cares and INE, we don't predefine a thematic or geographical focus for eCubed. We're really wanting the priorities to be driven by people in these contexts. And that's guided a lot of how we've kind of developed the application process and review process. The second principle being that local actors should be at the center of the research process. So we support research approaches that empower and build the capacity of local actors throughout the entire research process, from the identification of the research question to research design, implementation, analysis, and dissemination. And that's really what Dubai Cares is looking for as they're reviewing proposals. I think as a sector, knowledge generation has really been driven by organizations and agencies remote from these contexts. And we're really wanting to kind of try and shift that, even in terms of the languages that we're generating evidence in. So exciting to be doing more work in this area. And then the third principle is just that evidence and knowledge are global public goods. So the ambition for eCubed is that all EIE stakeholders be empowered by evidence, and therefore the evidence that's generated through eCubed should be made freely available with no restriction in access. So this is generally a principle that INE has. All of our information is freely accessible online by our members, which it's free to join. So I would encourage all of you to join if you're interested. But it's been exciting, I would say, over the past 4 years. We're in our 4th year of research proposals to kind of further refine these priorities. And they're reflected in our 3 main assessment criteria. We, of course, have a kind of more rigorous review process, but just to share those 3 criteria, and then I will stop talking because I think it's more important to hear from other folks. But the criteria are really looking at proposals that outline usable research, so contributing to the evidence base by identifying and responding to a gap in data or evidence, design and implementation and dissemination that is led by and inclusive of voices of people and institutions within crisis-affected contexts, and then research that includes a really clear dissemination strategy to produce a global public good. So apologies for not sharing more visuals with that presentation. Sorry for the tech challenges, but if you're interested in learning more, there's a lot of information available on our website, inee.org, and then you can search eCubed, which is the research fund, and I'm also happy to be in touch with anyone who has additional questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. That was really interesting, and you've given us a lot of information that I'm sure will form part of the discussions in the breakout groups when they happen. But first, we have 10 minutes for a question and answer period. And I have received one question, but I'm not sure if there are others that would be sent in the main chat box. So maybe I'll ask the first question, and if there are more, then I think Martin is the facilitator who's going to be forwarding me questions as they come up. Let me see. So this question is from Sinead McGrath, I think. And so it is, I am interested in the dichotomy of humanitarianism versus justice. One narrative often seems to cancel the other. Humanitarianism's muting the voices of people seeking justice against discrimination, etc. And I think that's open to all of our presenters. I'm not sure if anyone wants to take it. It's, I think, a complex question and a good one.
I would love Napoleon to take that question because I think you'll have a lot more insight when you're working with folks. But I will add that we do have a humanitarian industrial complex, and we should take note of that. That's something that we need to change, that it's on the backs and the burdens of people who are impacted, that we are unfortunately making funding and money for folks to work and help these folks. So yeah, Napoleon, please.
Your sound.
You need to unmute.
So Nora, I'm sorry, I'm having some audio problems. Nora, so can you just summarize the question, please?
Sure. So this person is interested in the dichotomy of humanitarianism versus justice. So one narrative often seems to cancel the other, meaning humanitarianism muting the voices of the people seeking justice against discrimination, for example. Any thoughts?
That's really a complex questions. When we talk about economy and humanitarian muting, did I understand that? Humanitarian muting people seeking justice?
Mm-hmm.
Would you like me to put it in context? This
Yes.
is great. Yeah. Sorry for my very heavy questions, because it's just something in the context of Ireland that I'm interested in, because we have a system of reception conditions which is really completely inappropriate for asylum seekers. And very often people are very much interested in the helping aspect, but they're not so much interested in the justice and equality aspect. So that's basically how about whether you've had difficulties in framing, you know, that people have rights as well as are maybe, you know, vulnerable people, etc.
Yeah. As you said, we really, it's hard to believe that we've got cases of humanitarian who kind of murder refugees or they put conditions. Let me give you one example of people who live in some, I'm not gonna name them, but people who live in some refugee camp in Africa, where when the refugee name is on the list of people to be resettled, you have some humanitarian who work with local governments or central government who say, okay, you need to believe in this and your story need to relate to the government program so that we can let you to go through the resettlement process. And on the other side, they will say, we're gonna let you go through if you pay a certain amount of money, which they don't have. So, and we were really sad to hear that it's something that happens, and humanitarian shouldn't be doing that at all. It's very, very sad. I'm not saying that many people do that, but there are some in some corners of this world that people take advantage of refugees or people in need. So that's a very sad event.
Thank you. We have another question for Napoleon, which is from Andy, and it is, if you were not constrained by federal regulations and such, how would you make your program more refugee-led?
Andy.
Good question.
Yeah, I would say we are a mixed program. Yes, we work with federal grant. We need to respect or abide by their recommendations, but also we do have our own fundraising events. Like we have every September of each year, we have what we call Global Gourmet, where we invite local administrations, neighbors, churches, and other people of goodwill, and we tell them what we do. We try to change mind. You know, there's some people who think refugees are undocumented people, and they don't make a difference between someone who came here legally and someone who came here in another way. So we first explain to people, refugees are people who come to United States with a screened status and a refugee status with a travel letter with a visa. So they enter United States legally. So please understand that these people are not illegal. They are totally legal and allowed to work in the United States. So, so beside that government or federal grant, which is not really enough, let me give you the picture. They give us $975 per person for 3 months. I'm not good in math, but you can do your calculation and see if you can use that money to pay rent, water, and other utilities. So we need to really work hard with local and other people of goodwill to find funds so that we can support our refugees' families, send them to pay their rent and pay other needs they have, because when you have a single mom, 8 kids, that's a family of 9. So if you give each person $9.75, that money is going to be ended in 2 weeks. So we need to find more resources, financial and human resources, to be able to do our job, not easily, but in a correct way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Napoleon. So we're going to move on now, because we're at close to the 10-minute point there. And we're going to move into breakout sessions. So I'm just going to describe a little bit about how this will go. We don't have to do anything. Bill Rintz is our technological whiz, and he will do everything for us in terms of breaking into the groups. Each group will have a facilitator. And at the 20-minute mark, you'll be asked to compile some of your reflections or your statements from your group into a poem to share. And I think Bill is able to share his screen to show us. Oh, if you look into the chat box, there is the template of the poem, and it's adapted from Where I Am from George Ella Leon. And so it doesn't need to make sense, and maybe it'll be inspiring and very easy, or it could make no sense. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be grammatically correct, but here's an example of what it might look like. So we are from Soft Cotton, zoomed out of webinars in east, west, north, and south parts of the world. We are from I Am Sorry, and you have changed my perspective. I can't imagine what that was like. I am listening, and I'm going to stay with you in the struggle. We're from Hope and Despair, and our action will be to seek out local community organizations to fund, and that their board of director and staff are representative of their community that they serve. So that's an example, and then we'll all come back together after the breakout sessions and share our poems. Okay, so here we go.
Thanks, Nora. The breakout rooms will start now. Happy discussing.
Thank you. Somebody else has to help me with this.
Nora, maybe you did mention, and it's okay if you don't have a poem, that Peter Kyle was making some important comments. I would maybe invite Peter, if you can share those with the group. I imagine that they're relevant to everybody here.
He got cut off, and it would be part of our poem. This is our poem, actually.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Just to remind you, my name is Peter Kyle. I'm an incoming director of Rotary International. And I just wanted to say that throughout the Rotary world, there is increasing focus on refugee issues, internally displaced persons, the humanitarian aspects of the refugee crises around the world. So Rotary is addressing this issue at 3 levels. At the 40,000 foot level, the macro level, we have appointed a Rotarian ambassador, a professor of law, as our official representative to the UNHCR in Geneva, and we'll shortly have another representative in New York. And the purpose of these relationships is to enable clubs and districts around the world to benefit from the thinking, the policies, the guidance, the lessons learned, the monitoring and evaluation, everything that UNHCR does in the refugee era. We want to learn from and apply it in clubs and districts. Secondly, we are exploring the possibility of developing a Rotary Action Group for refugees. The Rotarians and the Rotary Peace Fellows on the call may know something about Rotary Action Groups. We have 30 or so focusing on different areas. We don't have one on refugees. And the idea is that we need a central body within the Rotary family that can focus on policies and procedures and coordinate the different initiatives around the Rotary world. So this is in the very early stages, but I hope that this will grow. And if anyone is interested, please send me an email, peter.kyle@gmail.com. You can get me through Bill. And thirdly, there are many specific Rotary projects, peace and education projects, health projects of many sorts around the Rotary world. And we are in the process of trying to inventorize these and develop lessons learned. We had a refugee focus at the Rotary Day at the UN last November. We have a Refugee Day in a few weeks' time here in Washington with the Organization for American States. And there are many other international Rotary-related initiatives in the pipeline. So I just wanted to tell you that that's what's happening at the Rotary level. I'm excited. I'm thrilled to see so many Peace Fellows on the call. I do hope you will stay engaged. In this area in particular, you have so much knowledge and passion and enthusiasm, and we need to take advantage of that. So that was the extent of our poem.
Oh, that's perfect. And I'm sorry I didn't do a good job at the beginning, but that was a wonderful way to end our webinar. And so I hope that you're inspired and called to action the same way that I feel from watching the presentations and also hearing Peter speak. And to me, what the presentation spoke to was the power and change that can happen when we speak, stand, and act with refugee groups or led by refugee communities and individuals who are experts in their own lives and know best what actions and support we can provide. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone for attending, and especially the Rotary Peace Fellows Association for making the webinar possible. Huge thank you to all of our presenters, our facilitators, Bill Rintz for his technical support and prowess. And another thank you to Stacy Martin for organizing and supporting everyone to create their videos. And our next webinar is an arts-based methods and peace building, and that's on June 18th. And then again, the Rotary Cyber Conference, Peace Conference, starts June 27th. So thank you so much for coming, and have a good morning or evening wherever you are. Thank you. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.